everyone. I am Dr. Manuel L. Castillo, faculty of the Department of Forest Biological Sciences, College of Forestry and Natural Resources, and curator for native forestries at the UPLB Museum of Natural History. I will be your MC today. Thank you for taking time to join us today for the MNH Quincentennial Commemoration Webinar Series. Baliktanaw, Kasaysayan, Kalikasan with the topic, Revisiting the Past for Medicinal Plants and Their Conservation. To start our session today, let us welcome our director, Dr. Marian P. De Leon, who will be giving her welcome remarks.
Isang makakalikasan at makasaysayang umaga sa ating lahat. A pleasant good morning to each and everyone. Welcome to the UPLB Museum of Natural History's Quincentennial Commemoration 10-part webinar series. The UPLB MNHS, ang Pilipinas sa loob ng 5 siglo, features online webinar series and virtual exhibit focusing on the theme Baliktanaw, Kasaysayan at Kalikasan. The 10-part webinar series give us the chronicles and highlights in Philippine natural history for the past 500 years and the gaps and opportunities for research on the diverse Philippine flora, fauna, and microorganisms. Last September 8, we had our 9th webinar given by UPLB Professor Emeritus and MNH Curator for Algal Collections, Dr. Milagrosa M. Cos. She presented to us a written historical account of algology in the Philippines from 183 years after Magellan discovered the Philippines in 1521 to present. Dr. Goss clearly attributed the beginnings and enrichment of Philippine algology from the European priests, naturalists, and collectors who stayed in the Philippines and to the many expeditions that passed or visited the country. We are now on the 10th webinar in our Baliktanaw series, the finale presentation to be given by our speaker, Dr. Lourdes B. Cardenas, MNH Curator for Medicinal Plants and former MNH Director. She will deliver a talk on revisiting the past for medicinal plants and their conservation. She will give a review on the role of medicinal plants in the Philippines in the last 500 years, the Filipino traditional medicine practices and influences, and the impact on the direction of medicinal plants research and utilization in the country. We hope you will give your full attention to Dr. Cardenas' presentation, as this may pave way to new opportunities for potential medicinal plants for emerging and re-emerging diseases in the country. On behalf of the MNH Local Organizing Committee Chair, Mr. Florante Cruz, and Co-Chair, Mr. Alvin Fajardo, I would like to thank the MNH curators and staff who served as speakers, MCs, moderators, technical assistants, and session coordinators for making every Baliktanaw webinar a success. Allow me to give our heartfelt gratitude to the esteemed curators, researchers, and partners of the UPLB MNH, Dr. Victor Tixon, Dr. Laura David, Dr. Juan Carlos T. Gonzalez, Mr. Christian Perez, Dr. Leticia E. Afuang, Professor Philip Alviola, Professor Judilyn Di Malibot, Dr. Emmanuel Ryan de Chavez, Dr. Noel G. Sabino, Professor Annalie S. Hadsal, Forester Michelle A. San Pascual, Dr. Ireneo L. Lit Jr., Mr. Jeremy Carlo B. Neredo, Professor Emeritus Milagrosa M. Goss, and our 10th webinar speaker, Dr. Lourdes B. Cardenas. We would also like to thank the UPLB Chancellor, Dr. Jose V. Camacho, Vice Chancellor Forester Roberto Sereno, and the UP Vice President for Public Affairs, Dr. Elena Pernia, for entrusting to UPLB MNH the task of bringing together experts who showcase the 500 years of Philippine natural history during the quincentennial commemoration of circumnavigation. We believe we all learn from these webinar presentations. To all our participants, our sincerest thanks for joining us every other Wednesday of the month since we started this in May. We hope for your active participation in this last QCC webinar and the forthcoming MNH activities. We will launch the MNH QCC virtual gallery as we celebrate the UPLB MNH 45th anniversary this coming September 30. We hope to see you all virtually, and please do visit our website, FB page, and YouTube channel. Again, thank you very much and stay safe, everyone.
Thank you, Director De Leon. Now I will be giving the floor to the moderator for today's session, Prof. Pastor L. Malabrigo Jr., Curator for Trees at the UPLB Museum of Natural History.
Thank you, Dr. Manny Castillo, and good morning, everyone. So before I introduce our speaker for today's webinar, I would like to remind you of our house rules. First, make sure that your audio is on mute and your video is turned off. Practice good webinar etiquette. And second, please use the Zoom webinar Q&A feature to send questions. And for those who are watching on our YouTube stream, just put your questions in the comments area and our technical assistant will copy your questions to the Zoom Q&A. Okay, so I have the pleasure to introduce to you our speaker for today's webinar. Our speaker obtained her Doctor Rerum Naturalium, or Doctor of Natural Sciences, in 1993 at the Heinrich Heine Universität Düsseldorf, specializing in plant biotechnology and pharmaceutical biology. Her thesis was on the elaboration of essential oil components during somatic embryogenesis of fennel, while her postdoc research was on the initiation of transformed root cultures of selected local medicinal plants. Her published works include her MS thesis on the elaboration of alkaloid in callus cultures derived from floral explant Chichirica or Catharanthus roseus, and the 2002 NAST special citation for monograph on the medicinal and poisonous plants of Mount Pulag, Benguet, Philippines, where she co-authored by Miss Mary Ann Ocahano and the late Dr. Norma Aguilar. She was also a contributor to 2 volumes on medicinal plants of the plant resources of Southeast Asia. So our speaker is a professor in her and our alma mater, the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. She is a curator of the UPLB Museum of Natural History and teaches, among others, the graduate courses on biotechnology of plant secondary metabolites. She conducts research on the in vitro conservation of medicinal plants and leads the DOST-initiated Philippine Biorepository Network, a project of which is the establishment of a medicinal plants garden. She was mentored by Professor Ludivina S. de Padua and Professor Dr. August Wilhelm Alferman. Friends, without further ado, I now give the floor to our speaker, Dr. Lourdes B. Cardenas. Ma'am Lu, the floor is yours po. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Pat, for that kind introduction. And I truly appreciate your being here, my teachers, my students, friends. And it's just like something like a reunion. When Director Marion De Leon mentioned we learned a lot, we truly learned a lot. And I hope I can share this with you. And I would request you to also consider some points na not so clear to me, and perhaps you know it better. Let's get started. 100 years. So let me share my slide. I was really happy to join in, because if you look at this slide, sorry. If you look at this slide, this was taken in 2008. And I was really excited to be there. This is in Mount Pulag, because 7 years or 8 years ago, we were able to document the plants, but we couldn't get the permit at the time, the collection permit at the time. So we had to wait for 7 years. That's research life. And the material that we're looking at was based on a 1910 work by Professor or Dr. Merrill, Elmer Drew Merrill. So there is really a connection of going back to time. Now, if I'll ask you, consider the medicinal plants of your choice, the uppermost in your mind when you think of Philippine medicinal plant. What comes to your mind? And if you answer bayabas, true enough, bayabas and banaba, what else? Oregano, the Coleus amboynicus or Plectranthus amboynicus, not the oreganum type. And then probably sambong you would mention. And true enough, this was mentioned as the 4 topmost popular medicinal plants in the Philippines in the 1992 survey. Right up front, I would say that the reference material for a part of this presentation was taken from the traditional medicine book published by UP System, and this was written by Professor Mercedes Planta. I hadn't had a chance to meet her yet, but I truly appreciate the time of meeting with her. She also cited the work of Dr. Kim Sumbing and a number of other works, which I will mention a bit later also. So if we consider this plant, and I would like to engage my audience, so I would ask, which among these, based from that book, is used by the Filipinos to as a vulnerary to stop bleeding? 1, 2, or 3 from the left. And you might have answered, it's number 3. It's the tawa-tawa. You recognize the other 2? Which one is used as for leisure, taken in, and probably now you wouldn't dare, but at the time it is cited that even children and adults of different ages take this. There's even an article on this. You have the betel plant, Piper betel. It looks like pepper, and it's in the family of pepper. And the other one on the left side is the Mong Maria, Artemisia vulgaris for us, but the closely linked species, the Artemisia annua of China, is the one that gives the artemisinin, which is used for malaria. So medicinal plants are there even from centuries back, and even before the Spanish came to us, the pre-colonial times. Now it's a surprise for me to see, and I understand now why I know the dita. When I came to UPLB, that's one in the 70s. That's one of the plants that Professor De Padua, my mentor, also mentioned. And if you go to UPLB now and you buy Quezon Puti, close by, you can see this tree. This is your Alstonia scolaris, cited as one of the plant which is most studied in the latter part of the stay of the Spanish, and even probably in the next century afterwards. It addresses different problems, and even now I know of some who are also using it as a traditional medicinal plant for certain purposes. You can check out the books. It's a long list that it addresses. So the previous curators, when they presented the Baliktanaw talk, they also presented the work of Father Manuel Blanco. And within this time frame, 16th, 17th, 18th, 20th century, at the time, 19th century, at the time of the Spanish, a number of friars, just like in Europe, a number of friars wrote books about medicinal plants. It was also presented before that there is the Manila galleon trade, Manila, Mexico, Acapulco, galleon trade. And I just took this picture. It is allowed to take picture then at the National Museum of Anthropology. And you can see on the right-hand side, the jars which were taken from the San Diego galleon. It used to be, it was a naval ship, converted as a naval ship, but actually it is a trade ship. And you get all these jars, and you can just imagine the exchanges in plant materials. Probably live plants are also transported here and there. Now, I also stumbled on the work of the next, Mr. Philip Cruz and the group, and he cited the Manila-Acapulco galleon trade during that time and noted that possibly these are some of the medicinal plants which came from the Old World, citing Europe, that area, and from the New World, which is considered newer than the Americas. So you have Acapulco, ipil-ipil, aloe vera, which can be higher than man in Mexico even now, and then the oregano, which is Coleus or Plectranthus aromaticus, but sometimes we see the genus Oreganum, which is another genus for the international oregano. From the Old World, the Ocimum basilicum, I'm surprised that Artemisia vulgaris is cited from the Old World. Menta, of course, is in the Pharmacopoeia of Europe, even ages back. Rosemary is there, and Symphytum officinale, which for a time we know very well here in the Philippines. We can touch on that later. So the exchange of materials there, and the list of medicinal plants grow bigger. Now, when I consider the past centuries, and I think of pictures, I'd say there might be copyright infringement, but I realize I don't have to use other pictures. Sad to say, what is happening now in the countryside must have happened the same thing, not much changes in the past centuries. For example, with the MNH work we've had in the Bicol area, this is Jose in Gatbo, Camarines Norte. This is a typical day, uprooting the plant and using it, making a decoction, placing it in alcoholic or even at times in kerosene for medicinal purposes, topical purposes. And you might wonder, after so many centuries, how come we're still at this? Considering, as cited by Pigafetta and some other writers, the pre-colonial Philippines is actually not uncivilized. Later, it was cited that other nationalities even look at the way we practice hygiene, the love for bathing, because this is a humid country, and so on. But we are stuck with this. We're stuck with this. Well, considering also that in reality, even 80% of the population of the world, as cited by WHO, still rely on herbal medicine for primary health care. But it seems to be a sad event or a sad affair. And this is an eye-opener, and also taken from the foreword written of the Planta book mentioned earlier, written by Professor Milagros Guerrero. And you can read it. As such, only in 1895, 1 year before the revolution of the Katipunan, was the regular medical corps established. So for the past almost 300 years, the Filipino rely on traditional medicine. Why? Also for this, they have the doctors, they have the hospital, but the doctors and the hospital cater to their own race. So you can just imagine at the time that it is so, but Filipinos survived for so many centuries with the traditional, as mentioned by Professor Planta in her book. So consider what's happening at the time. And if we look, I'll go back to that one later. If you look at the lower left corner of this site, in 1565, a few years after Magellan arrived, there is already a military hospital established in Cebu. But take note, when the government was placed in Manila, the hospital was relocated in Intramuros. And then much later, when the Americans came, they also changed the name and to Stenberg Hospital. But At that time, it is the missionaries and the friars who take care of primary health care of the people and got exposed to traditional herbal medicine of the Filipinos. So also from this religious organization, we have the San Lazaro Hospital in 1878 and the San Juan de Dios Hospital also. And by this time, this also, because it is of the religious order, they also help the poor of the Filipinos and cater to this. But there are only a few hospitals at the time. It was also cited that in 1861, the Real Jardín Botánico was established. But the government, the Spanish government, not too keen on learning the herbal medicine or the traditional medicine of the Filipinos as an establishment, as a government. We would find that there are only few medicinal plants in the Real Jardín. They focus more on what can be used for commerce, as presented also by the other curators before. So you traded coffee, you have, of course, we know that we have the tobacco industry, you have the Alhambra, you have all these things at the time. Focus is there and not on medicinal plants. And then if you look at the other end, which I got not from this book, but from some other sources, somehow it was missed out that there was a pharmacy. And it is the right pronunciation is Botica Boy. Is it familiar to you? So it's in Escolta. It is, or it was in Escolta. And this was established by a Spanish known as Dr. Nigrao. However, by 1850, it was bought by two German pharmacists, Schmidt and Steck. And this is surprising, in 1887, with that unit or that industry, in the exposition, World Exposition in Madrid and in St. Louis, award were given, actually gold award, for the ilang-ilang and sampaguita essences from the Philippines. And the trip given was Pablo Sartorius. Sad that when I was in Germany, I did not know this, sorry to say. I grew up in the martial law years with my history. Okay, so that's how it looks at the time. During the time of the Spanish rule, it was noted for that time, lower right-hand corner, that the pre-colonial Filipinos are actually advanced, as cited, advanced in hygiene, sanitation, as cited by Antonio Pigafetta, and other write-ups as cited in the book of Professor Planta. There are also published work, and this we have to really see, and I'm thankful for the translations and for the summary given by this book and other books later. The work of Francisco Alsina, also priest, about the plants, the different roots, bark, and leaves of medicinal plants. You have of course, the Flora de Filipinas by Father Blanco, and another one in 1892, Medicinal Plants of the Philippines, which is considered the first scientific classification of medicinal plants and their active principles. Why is this so, and why is this important? Take note that the other publications may be botanical because the botanists wrote it. But you need somehow the basis for the medicinality, quote unquote, the active principles of these plants. And it is cited that in 1892, this is the start that we have it. Going back to the previous slide, take note that the rule was until 1898, but in 1871, that is the first faculty of pharmacy was established in UST. It's only in 1877 that the first Filipino physicians graduated. And the 5 religious orders were the one that promoted botanical pharmacy. So during as the Spanish rule ended, then that was the time that Filipino doctors, pharmacists started to be there. And I was wondering, what about Dr. Jose Rizal? My friend Aleli and helping from other people provided me a list of the medicinal plants which was mentioned by the plants mentioned by Dr. Jose Rizal in Noli Me Tangere. Nothing was cited much on medicinal plants. The same way, I encountered an article by Dr. Lasco. This is taken in the net and cited later in this work. And he also reviewed the plants that might have been mentioned when Dr. Jose Rizal was in the Pitan. Nothing also on that. We know that there is a Rizalista movement. They have medicinal plants and everything. But as cited by Dr. Lasco, it doesn't connect to Dr. Jose Rizal from his point of view, and possibly it's right, because nothing was mentioned about medicinal plants at the time. So what prevailed then during the 300 years when we had the Filipino traditional medicine? The same thing, the same philosophy that prevailed in practically all over the world. And it was cited that the theory of bodily humors referring to body fluid, like phlegm, blood, yellow bile, and black bile, such thing. There should be a balance of these, the cold and the hot, the different temperaments of people related to not having a balance of this. And the proper balance can be attained in relation also to the environment, to nature, to how you handle your body. And there will be cases when there is a negative, evil spirit, that's also the belief, can affect your health and so on. Nuances of this can be seen in the major systems of medicine, and you can read through this. If you use Theresa Evans' pharmacognosy book, the word Western does not refer to the conventional medicine now, but in this one, in this pharmacognosy book, Western cites the origins in Mesopotamia and Egypt. You can just imagine the papyrus having all these write-ups. The Unani of the Islam, the Ayurvedic of the Hindu, centered in Western Asia and the Indian continent, and the Orient traditional medicine. The different countries, you can see even now different practices, and we can include the Philippines here, which is a mixture of different influences and inherent system of medicine. And then, of course, not to be forgotten, this is big influence, the traditional Chinese medicine. You can see the years cited pointing at the documents, and it goes back to centuries ago, even before Christ. So in the Philippines, I had the chance to meet one who practices Ayurveda. I placed the link there. I went to him, to the Father Jacob Nalian, because I would like to refer the plant that I'm working on in a project for micropropagation. The other one is Dr. Jimmy or Chiming Sheng, who was also one of the speakers when the American Chamber of Commerce invited us to speak. And there was a good discussion in summary of traditional Chinese medicine. You can also access that in the link given below. So when you look at Filipino traditional medicine, we cannot really say that it's just one system, but it is inherently, there are nuances between groups of people. And how many people's group do we have in the Philippines? How many languages, quote unquote, 175 and more? How many islands do we have? What type of habitat do we have? We have the subtemperate, we have the tropical. You can see, for the botanist, you can see biogeography also, the differences in the islands, where is the center of biodiversity, which are related, and so on. There are a whole lot of biodiversity in the Philippines, and that has to be taken into consideration. So instead of using pictures from anywhere, I use the pictures I've had in the past years, and I borrowed this picture from PJ, Dr. De Castro, Kina Roland. And another lady, as co-writer for this project. This is a CHED project, and I was the mentor at the time. And it was such a privilege because it's also a time for me to be exposed to the Aita population, even for a short while. Now let's look at the traditional medicine, most likely practiced during that time under the Spanish rule and even now. It was cited in the work of the group in their project that in 1571, as written by Tamaki 203, the population of Negritos in southeastern Luzon, so bandang Quezon ng ibaba, was much greater than the dominant Tagalog. And this picture was taken in Mount Bacong, Alabat Island in Quezon. And these are the Aitas. And they still, until now, use the Inaita language, their own language. Take note, as cited in that project, they take fresh materials. They don't get all those materials. They leave something to regenerate, to grow. And if they get extra, it is for selling. But usually, typically as nomadic people, they move around, they take fresh material. In contrast, this is my first salvo in fieldwork. This is a biodiversity work by the DNR under Ma'am De Padua, also at the time. And we're going to tag the medicinals without really interviewing people, spot the medicinal. And I said, how can I spot a medicinal in an area? So there is the traditional, which is hard to practice unless you really have, I want to protect also the intellectual property right. No? And at the time, there was no framework for that. So what is medicinal? You can also see plants that may be typical or similar in genus as other known medicinals in other country. And of course, you can check the literature if it is medicinal or not. My first humble, you can see Mr. and Mrs. Duten of Nara, Palawan, actually preparing their medicinal. The difference here is they add oil, they wrap it, and then they heat it, and topical application. The other galenicals like decoction, infusion, and so on, they also do just like the other group. But the first humbling experience for me is when Mrs. Duten, she was very, very shy, as you can see in the picture, with barefoot, told me, we went out of the tubo and told me, eto, medicinal ito. And then she uprooted it. And I could just smell certain scent. I didn't know the plant. But when we came back, we checked it in the botanical book, etc. And with Miss Marianne Cajano of MNH, we checked on Polygala. And true enough, when I checked my pharmaceutical biology book, German pharmaceutical biology book, Polygala is listed. And it contains the methyl salicylate, just like in a number of plants, you can smell. Some people can really smell the methyl salicylate. But the active constituent here is saponins, and it is used for purposes like for ano tawag dito, to cough up the phlegm, etc. So in this case, this is a humbling experience because hindi mo rin matatawaran what the natives know. And I remember in Cordillera, in the last forum, the natives stood up and said to the researchers of the lowlands, what are you to say that we do not know of? Alam na nila. And they survived for generations. So we can learn from them. Okay, so this one, this is just in a few weeks ago, taken from a good friend, Gina, from Bangeg area in Mount Pulag. And I was asking Gina, I said, ano ba talaga yung kanyaw? And a good friend at the Department of Anthropology shared with me the write-up of the Ibaloy Kanyaw. This is a celebration. And in this case, Gina said, this is bat-bat. They prepare when they have to go to a wake. And remember the sound? Masarap maglakwatsa, no? Nakakamiss. So I said, any medicinal plants that you use at the time? But she said, not really. And the younger one said, well, it's actually the tapoy, which you can see in Sagada, they serve with the rice wine. And this is part of the celebration. So different approaches for different people. 300 years of this under the Spanish rule. And then I asked, what about Dr. Jose Rizal? He was a doctor, graduated. He went abroad, different countries, more than 10 countries pala, meron siyang statue. Even if he just passed by, they place a statue. Not only the Philippine hero, but considered the pride of the Malay race. So I said, he is considered a polymath. Polymath meaning knows much, many things. And we were wondering, my friend and I were wondering at the time, he was able to reach this place when we had a hard time going there. It is at Wilhelmsfeld, it is in Heidelberg. And this was in February 1886 to May 1887. Almost 1 year, over a year, when he stayed in Germany. Later, he stayed in the Pitan before his execution. And I was wondering, what was he thinking? He was thinking of the Filipinos in their situation with traditional medicine and the hardship being encountered later. And if you look at the international changes at that time, take note he was in Germany 1886. In 1804, the first extraction of a medicinal plant worldwide is recorded. And this was done by the work of Sir Turner. The poppy, Papaver somniferum, they cut the young floral bud, they get the opium, and then they fractionated it to get the morphine, the codeine, which you know now, which are being used now in medicine. That's in 1804. In 1831, the Atropa belladonna, the atropine in Atropa belladonna was already purified. And one of the uses of atropine is for reaching the eye retina, because it dilates the pupil, no? It dilates this. And Rizal was an ophthalmologist. He stayed with the clinic of doctors, eye doctors. So during that time, even if it has not been out, the work on aspirin, what we call as aspirin, actually it's salicin, the glycoside from the willow tree that can be a pain reliever. It already started to be known in 1828, but not purified. So 1828, you can recognize the name, no? These are real people, Buckner and Gerhardt and Hofmann in Germany. They were able to purify and later come up with the first drug of the word. Coming out in 1899 was named aspirin, attributed to Dr. Felix Hofmann of Bayer. It's called aspirin because it can also be taken from Spirilla plant and acetylation, I think. And there was also another French group working on this. But this is the first drug. So what, one year after Dr. Jose Rizal's execution, it was already synthesized. And 3 years after, it was already in the market. This is my pivot point in my cuento. And let's move to the next 100 years. Okay, let's have a break. Consider this plant. Which plant do you think is used for diabetes? 1, 2, or 3? There is this plant actually standing now at IBS, which is used for bath. Some people also use it for cooking, and it has essential oils. But also cited now and a landmark, it was used by Dr. Kisumbing, considered by Dr. Kisumbing to help treat tuberculosis. This is the Alagao, number 1. And surprisingly, which plant is not included as a species, is not included in the book Colonial Times of the Philippines by Dr. Plata, and well cited by Dr. Kisumbing also, that it was only the recorded use of this plant was only in 1858, not earlier, rather 1857, not earlier. This is Lagundi. So what was cited earlier is Vitex trifolia, which is a different one. I've seen that before. We had that before in the garden. But the Lagundi that we're considering now is only from, at least cited, no? From 1857, cited as a vulnerary, that is for wound healing. And we know Lagundi is the first, we can consider the first licensed drug in the Philippines, Filipino-made drug. So there are changes through time, and these changes through time you can also see on the left side, and I consider the years when we can say it is the American occupation of the Philippines, where in fact we have the independence in the 1940s. So during this time, what happened? There is a pivot point where Dr. Jose Rizal can be positioned there, no, in that position at the time, and there's so many changes. But at the time in 1902 and the succeeding years, there is cholera epidemic, and we can relate well to this. So when the Americans came, they saw the sanitation was not good. There was lack of primary health care. Everything was down. They had to attend to these infections and diseases. And so the focus was really on sanitation. And at the time, because of Jenner's discovery, the smallpox vaccine at the time, it was sent worldwide, and there was even the expedition for helping the different nations survive. So there is even I forgot the term; it's in the other slide, but they sent a galleon and people to vaccinate people around the world. Can relate it to it now, no? And due to these approaches, there is also the emphasis on laboratory work, science-based, over empirical method based on experience, based on case studies, just like traditional medicinal plant. And there was a shift. Nevertheless, the appreciation of Filipino traditional medicine flourished compared to the time when it was the Spanish ruling the Philippines. And again, the emphasis is on public health and in services. We have the Bureau of Science established by the Americans. There was a Bureau of Government Laboratories, the one that we hope we can have as a whole country, no? And helping together in the study of medicinal plants. There is the Journal of Science. And then remember the first group that graduated as doctors and pharmacists. One of them is Dr. Maria Leon Guerrero. And Leon Maria Guerrero, rather. And he's considered the first licensed pharmacist from USC, later also from UP, and the father of botany. So now we have a Filipino pharmacist and then doctors. But somehow, I'd like to ask you if this is true. I encountered a book and this was written. Herbal healing is a major blind spot in American medical training. It means the doctors trained in the United States were not exposed to herbal medicine as much as their counterparts, say, in Europe or in some other places. So if the Filipinos are trained in America, probably, and I ask you if this clicks or not so much inclined to herbal medicine at that time. I know there are changes in the last few years because when I did this book with Mary Ann Cajano in Mount Pulag, and then we check on the inventory of the plant, and then because I was freshly coming from Europe at the time, I can remember what are the medicinals in the temperate country, just like this Digitalis purpurea, which is for heart ailment. I realized at the time when we were doing this, there's no publication, limited, or probably limited that I have not encountered, about temperate plants in the Philippines. And so this is another venue for research. There are closely related medicinal plants of another species of known genus which can be present in the Philippines. And that was what we were after when we went back after 7 years to validate the medicinal plants and our CP project at the time. So what was happening at the time? What are the events happening at the time? Let's take note of the middle column here. In 1974, we're happy that the Philippine government realized that the medicines in the Philippines are getting costly, more expensive. So the realization of having your own drugs to be developed by the Filipinos is there. And with the leadership of Dr. Nelia Maramba, Dr. Conrado Dairit, you had the National Integrated Research on Plants, Medicinal Plants, on Medicinal Plants, the program. This later became, jumped to 2007, the Institute of Herbal Medicine, which also takes care now of our pharmacopoeia. Take note that we have the Philippine Pharmacopoeia. This is the recognized document, national document for medicinals and medicinal plants and medicines. Our Pharmacopoeia 1 was published in 2004. In other countries, like in Germany, almost every 3-5 years, they have another edition, and so on. Just like the US Pharmacopoeia and some other pharmacopoeia. Each country has, most of the countries have their own pharmacopoeia. And then from this work by the NIRPROM, we had the 10 recommended medicinal plants. And in 1994, 1996, the technology transfer was done. And we know now of Lagundi, Askov, and the series of materials that you have, medicinal plants that have been studied and approved by the FDA, Food and Drug Industry. Later, we were part of this. We know we have to stem losing our natural resources. So the Executive Order 247 was drafted and it was signed by President Fidel Ramos. The picture that I showed you, the very first picture, hit that. But as researchers, a number of us researchers, and some of us are here, really supported this because we can see we're bleeding, we're losing our natural resources. We're glad that in 1997 with Senator Xavier, if you remember him, the TAMA, Traditional and Alternative Medicine Act of 1997, which also instituted the Philippine, nakalimutan ko na naman, Traditional and Alternative Health Care. And this is an institution. It looks also at the Traditional Knowledge Digital Library, which is also developed in different parts of the world. I'm not too sure now, I have to check. And then we can see the movement. It takes some time, but we're moving. And in 2018, with the leadership at DOST, we have the Tuklas Lunas program. We have Tuklas Lunas centers. We have the discovery and development of health products. We also have the Philippine Biorepository Network, which is focusing first on medicinal plants, that hopefully there will be other bioresources that we will consider. And I'll go back to that. On the left-hand side, I would like to cite, aside from the multinational drug traders, distributors, manufacturer, medyo mahirap. You can see how the development of drug takes time. More so now at the COVID time. No? It takes time. It takes a whole lot of money. It is supposed to reach the clinical trials 1, 2, 3 before having it out in the world. And it is really costly and it will take time. So understandably, it's not easy to get into this. But I would like to cite that 1945, from the readings, we already have the United Drug, which became the United Laboratories in 1953. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a Filipino-owned company. And then we have the Pascual Laboratories, and we see that Pascual is one of the licensees and successful until now for the Lagundi product in the market. We also have, I'm citing 3 other Filipino companies. I'm not connected with them business-wise. They're good friends, and I appreciate the effort put in by the private industry also in support also and supporting each other, the government, the private industry. The Rainier's Research and Development Institute, if you have the Lawat shampoo, you can see that. The Natural Product Society of the Philippines, I'm so grateful that I'm part of this as a charter member. Started in 1996, and some of them are here, hello. And in 2001, we have the Philippine Marine Decidufolia Company, Noni Juice. This is Los Baños based by the Dr. Contado. And of course, in 2001, we have the Urbanex producing lineup of different materials and also products, and you can check their own web pages. I'm citing this because we're trying our best, no, as Filipinos, to shore our resources and to move on to develop. Looking at the right side, you might as well see what's happening in the world. We said that in 1898, the first drug was there. Now I'm inclined to biotechnology, so I have to bring this in. Working with biotechnology, the first plant secondary product was noted in 1976. If you remember the kimono, the Japanese, the red kimono, it comes from the traditional colorant, which is also an antibacterial, comes from a plant. They produce the cells, have it in big reactors, 2-story high, and they produce the chikungunya color. Is it cost effective? Japan is advanced. It's expensive to start a biotechnology thing, but it can be done. So that's it. In 1980, the transformed root culture for secondary product was also very popular, and until now being used for genetic transformation. This was my postdoc work in Germany. So in 1990s, there is a swift switch in trend again, but just like Hippocrates, when food is medicine and medicine is food, in Japan, the foshu for the foods for specific health uses in Japan. So the traditional medicinals is stretched out, the perimeter is stretched out to include functional food and nutraceuticals, but this has to be tested. Years back, you remember we have the no therapeutic claim, hindi nakakagamot issue. You remember that? We also had the if you're already there, if you're not that young, you also know the problem we had with ampalaya, whether it's folkloric or not, and then it was brought out. It's now considered validated and not just folkloric. So these things happen. It's part of the birthing, I could say, of our medicinal plant development, research and development. In 1986, the Chichirica's vincristine was patented in the US. Now there are some reactions and even some articles, and they ask the name of the plant, common name of the plant is internationally Madagascar periwinkle. And then they say it's a matter of branding also. And they say, are the Madagascar doesn't deserve to have some royalties. But if you think about it also, it is pantropic. It's everywhere. We have it in the Philippines, even in the seashore and everything. It's just that it's the company which was able to do a battery of tests, isolate the anti-cancer activity, and patent it. And some cultures don't patent things, but there are differences. There are differences in different ways. So how do we go on with our bioresource, our medicinal plants? Think about it. In 1993, so I lived Germany the first time, paclitaxel was approved by US FDA. Now you can see, even go to the clinic here, it is used for cancer therapy, chemotherapy. In 2006, the Banaba, the purosolic acid, was also patented in the US, diabetes. And this is a landmark because for a number of decades, they even pay commissioned well-known chemists, one of whom is J.P. Catney of British Columbia, to do the clicking together of the two alkaloids, monoalkaloids of the dimeric vincristine and dimblastine from Chichirica, because these are known for cancer, specific cancer lines as anti-cancer drug. It was tough, but in 2009, after a series of approaches, enzymatic, electric, etc., you can follow the literature. In vincristine had a total synthesis, chemical synthesis. So can you do away with the plant now if you have total synthesis? These are happening around the world in the last few decades. So going to this one, tama ba po ako? Hindi ba ako bumalik? I think bumalik ako. Okay. Sorry. Isin ko muna to. I mentioned that. I mentioned this. So this is the Cataranthus that you can see. You don't have to fight with anyone when it comes to common names because it can be San Vicente, Ataibia, Cataranthus, Chichirica, etc. So you have to go back to the scientific name. Now, if you look at another plant which has passed through history, and if I'll ask you about this is a breaker about plants. What is its use? You recognize this? If you answer it's a laxative, it approximates your age because this time, right before the pandemic, what is the mantra? Kilay is life. And castor oil is used to promote hair growth, and it's used for eyelashes, brow, the secret serum at the time. So the same effect is still used today, but packaged in a different way also. Of course, it can be a laxative. It can also be used here. It is used pure, and it is cold pressed to prevent, from German book, to prevent the poisonous protein to be part of the oil. So preparation is really important. I would like to ask that even the artemisinin, if you read the Nobel Prize for Wu Wu Tu, the one for artemisinin, she went back because she was boiling it, or she was doing a decoction, and later she checked her notes from traditional medicine used by her countrymen, and it says they just steep it overnight in water, and that is the time that she was able to get the active constituent, eventually the artemisinin for Artemisia for malaria. What then of our medicinal plants? When I was running in the first slide, I was after this, which we saw 7 years ago. So what can we do? We continue to document. We continue to see, validate whether it's medicinal or not. A friend taught me how to look at this because if you look at Hypericum perforatum, you can see the dots and the red spot. If you run the TLC, you can see this as the position of the hypericin, which is the antidepressant of St. John's wort. St. John's wort is Hypericum marbense. I'm not too sure with the epithet now, but this one is a relative. This is Hypericum pologense. We don't have the antidepressant activity here, and probably because we're always happy. We can also continue, this is in Aklan, like it's back, continue to have our own gardens like this. But the thing that I have noted during the turn of the century to the 21st century, people had been planting the 10 medicinal plants and would like to do business on this. Take note at the Philippines, in this picture taken from Anderson's Floral Kingdoms and Hotspots of the World, botanical hotspots. It is a rich country, but if you are colored red, that means there is a big decimation of your natural resources. Take note that all other countries have only a part of their country being red. The Philippines is red. So if you consider that, if you're staying in an island, care of the plants in your island. And I remember that was precisely what Professor Alferman told me right after I left, after the postdoc work. What could be a nice topic to do? And I was eyeing the transform route, which I learned. The thing that he told me is take care of your bioresources. And true enough, if you don't have it, there's nothing to work on right from the start. So if you look at the plant that we consider, the hypericin on the left side, Dr. Merrill only mentioned one type. But when we visited 90 years after, there are 3 different types, 3 different ecotypes, possibly signaling the destruction of the area. So you have the middle at the summit on the right-hand side, or the distribution of the plant, for that matter. On the right side in the mossy forest, and at the margin of the mossy forest on the left side. What else can we consider? This is this is not readily noted, but for my students, we did this because sometimes the wild type or the not so wild type, but indigenous already in the Philippines for a number of years, are edged out by the ornamentals. This is a good example. On the left side is the wild type planted by Professor De Padua. You can see the seeds up left-hand corner. Those are the seeds of Quisqualis indica. That is the 10-DO, one of the 10 DOH approved for anthelmintic, pagtanggal ng bulate. If you have the ornamental, which are also nice, they don't produce as much fruits and flowers, rather fruits and seeds, which you need. So there can be a change in constituents. Remember that the ornamental were bred for their, typically, for their good appearance, aesthetic value. But we're not after that, we're after the active constituent of the plant. And you can use biotechnology like this. This is the Ayurveda plant. This is Curculigo archaeoides, which published in literature. There was a big demand and we're losing the supply. This is taken from the wild. And when we spotted this in Palawi Island, MNH trip, we spotted this in Palawi Island. We had the permit from DNR. We brought it home. We did multiplication in the laboratory. We produced a number of the drug, which is the actually stem-like root. We check it. It contains the saponins as known. Well, not the very detailed, but the saponins are present also there. So you can do micropropagation. Another approach, this is Picard. You can do micropropagation specific, in this case, microrhizome, turmeric. If you have the microrhizome this small, you can manipulate it. You can do genetic engineering. Eventually, you can transfer it, buff, and so on. You can produce artificial seed and so on. So you can tap this particular field. And I would like to add what was mentioned by Dr. William Padulina, who was also our teacher in natural products, a number of us. And he was saying that we have to prepare for the future or the now. We have climate change. We have all these floods and everything. We have to be future-proof, so to speak, our plants and conserve them. And one of the approaches is, of course, genetic engineering, not necessarily changing the genome, as Dr. Lorena also espouses. No, you can use gene editing. You can use some other means. You can use natural breeding. But we have to protect our resources, and as much as possible, use everything that we have, we know, and work together continuously, because this is a big concern, and it is the concern of everyone. So the last slide that I'm going to show is the garden that we're developing under the Philippine Biorepository Network, the OST PCHRD initiated project. And under this, for medicinal plants, it's a small start, but we try to have it all together. We have researchers from UP Diliman and from other institutions, also research institutions. So we have the live plants, which is a showcase here at IBS. You can see this. We have the biosecure, taking care of the propagules and the stem, also in the UPLB, CAPS, College of Agriculture. In NIM, UP Diliman, we have the bio extracts. I'm sorry, in IB, we have the bio extracts. And we also work on the nucleic acid, and this is in the PGC, based in UP Diliman. Take note, the Lagundi, you have a hard time with Lagundi, and that's one of the things that need molecular mapping, at least marker for this. And all this, we have a database to put this together. It's a small start, but it's a good start, and we hope that this can continue on with the other medicinal plants we have. My last note is for my group project 1 PBN. Tatandaan niyo po nun to. This was left when we tried to remove the other trees, but it turns out Michelia champaca is the plant which the Americans tried to extract, just like the ilang-ilang of the Spanish, of the Germans being sent. They tried this because this is sweet smelling, but it didn't work. The extraction is, you need good extraction procedure. I worked with essential oils before. You need good containers, etc. You need the reference materials to do the testing, the specific substances. So if you can work together, if we have different fields, everyone can contribute, from basic standard classical fields to now the omics, and now anything, even engineering for our own custom-built equipment. And I remember Dean Cantoria telling me when I was doing my master's, I was thankful because I go to UP Diliman, to UST, even as a student. And we had a short talk. She didn't know me, and then she said, "You entered the wrong gate. You should have entered pharmacy." But years later, we saw each other in Germany, in Dusseldorf, and she said to me, "Tama ka, Lu. It can be from different fields, but working together for the same purpose." Especially the Philippines is different. You cannot compare it with Malaysia and Thailand, where the recipe are written on the board. So I hope we can carry on with medicinal plants and may it be a positive note that I leave, especially for the young generation. Thank you. Stop my screen sharing.
Okay. Wow. Thank you very much po, Ma'am Dr. Cardenas, for that very wonderful and informative talk. So I've been teaching botany and plant taxonomy for more than 2 years or 2 decades now. But still, I learned a lot of things from Ma'am's presentation.
I also learned a lot.
And Ma'am, because of those wonderful photos, sobrang na-miss ko na po ang fieldworks. I'm sure marami sa atin ang nakaka-relate. I hope makadiscover na rin po kayo soon ng halamang gamot sa...
Retire na ako.
Yeah.
Puchay.
Thank you po.
May I ask a question? I'm just wondering what is the tree. I'm looking at the chat. We have them. I'm just wondering what is the tree and the the answer to my question. Sorry. Okay. Sige lang po, tuloy niyo lang po. I'm just looking at the chat.
Okay. So I'm sure most of you are now interested to comment, clarify, or know more things about the presentation. So let us now have our open forum. So again, to our audience here in Zoom, please use the Q&A feature to send in your questions. And for those who are watching via YouTube Live, leave your questions in the comments box and our technical assistant will copy it to Zoom. We will try to answer as many questions as possible given the time allotted. Okay, Ma'am Lu, let me look at the Q&A box. Okay, Ma'am, here's the first question, and it came from Ma'am Aurora Maghirang. So, yeah, how about coconut daw po?
Actually.
Yeah, how about coconut where the country is bountiful of? Yeah. But until now, it has no approved therapeutic claim.
Actually, I look at the coconut and I almost included a slide of it. If you look at the traditional medicine, they're mentioning it as a carrier oil. Of course, the value of VCO cannot be disputed. And I believe if you look at the literature and even in practice, it's proven that to an extent it can be antiviral, antimicrobial. That's why they have the mouth pooling of coconut oil, VCO. if you have Dr. Toby Dairit here, he knows too well about this. Also, he can discuss on this. And at the same time, the way the coconut BCO is used and the way energy is released from this, unlike the other fatty acids, it's a direct use of energy. We have literature on this. Now, how the issue of why it is not yet quote unquote used. This is one of those things that are actually used. And remember when President Pinoy was also in the United States, and it was in the newspaper that they want the sports drink, coconut water, this time the water, not the oil. And we Filipinos say it's different when you have the fresh one. So it may not be flaunted, but actually it is working. And at best, I guess, at best not commercialized. So you can just readily make use of it. Even my mga lolo na hindi lang natatanong, they have preparations where they burn, where they do some other things with the coconut. Pero tama ka, it can be highlighted din nga. Yun po ang sagot ko. Baka may gustong mag-share na iba.
Yeah, thank you po for the answer. I think it's very well answered. Second question, ma'am, from Nomar Waminaw. How can we get a copy of the Philippine Pharmacopoeia?
This is limited edition. We can ask at the Institute of Herbal Medicine. Kung may mic din lang from there. I'm not sure because this is limited, and actually the copy I had for Pharmacopoeia 1 was the copy of Professor De Padua. She left with us. And
very precious publication.
Ayoko i-preempt, pero you can check the website of the Institute of Herbal Medicine, NIH.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Institute of Herbal Medicine website. Okay, another question from anonymous attendee. Do you know any indigenous food plants that can also serve as a medicinal plant?
Indigenous food plant?
Yes, ma'am.
We've been promoting malunggay, and actually malunggay is in the medicinal list also. And even in pharmacopoeia, German pharmacopoeia, international pharmacopoeia, the cabbage and the sulfur-containing plants are already there. That's also my question, if I may be allowed to ask, Pat. Kasi I'd like to ask everybody. I present this even in my economic botany course. Nakikita nyo naman yung samgyeopsal, di ba? I did not present the picture here, but the Korean also add their ginseng into the food. Now, if I'll ask us, anong mako-consider natin na function na pagkain pero may medicinal value which we also use? Is it luya or could it be some other thing? And take note, no, it's how many of us love to cook, and we visit the different regions. Kailangan mag-travelog na tayo. But you can see the different ingredients added. Which of these food plants are also quote-unquote medicinal or health promoting? PCHRD also have this line about functional food, and funding for researches along this line. No? So it's also good, just like Dr. Padulina mentioned, it's not just the medicinal, but you can work on some other secondary products or some other constituents, natural colorant and so on, which we hope to do also with the group here in UPLB. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I think DOST is supporting a lot of these kinds of projects. In fact, we have an ongoing project on the indigenous, but we only focus on 5 species. TB, basically for the natural colorants and other potential food products.
But we have to bring it talaga. We listen to our entrepreneur friends in the industry. We really have to bring it hanggang sa dulo sana.
Yes,
I also would like to recognize Picard was one of the earliest, if not the earliest, who funded that. There was a time there's no funding, not much funding for medicinal.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
There were decades that it was like that. And then you have the DA Bar also, DA Biotech also providing funding for certain research.
Yes, ma'am. Because if we will read the book of Kisumbing, it seems almost every plant has medicinal and even food value. Yeah.
Can I read a question which was posted by Floor coming from Dr. Diary? What priority steps, Toby, no? What priority steps should we undertake to preserve our biological resources in the Philippines? It's fast. We're against time this time. And pag nakita mo yung yung mga baha and everything, may point din talaga yung binanggit ni Dr. Padoline to really work on plants that are hardy. If this can be done for commercial plants, not necessarily changing the genome, as mentioned, no? You can speak with molecular biologists who know this better, and we have ample critical mass of people working in molecular biology here in UPLB. I'd also like to cite and not to forget why my interest also in plant biotechnology. Remember Makapuno?
Yeah.
That is embryo rescue. It's like a baby taking from the natural womb, placed in that test tube to grow because it cannot grow in the natural womb. That was developed here in the Philippines, and it is Professor Emerita de Guzman, who I'm glad she was my teacher also. And if we can do that with our other plants, why can't we do it with the medicinals?
Yeah.
But of course, the first thing to do is inventory the area. I think, Toby, that is one approach that you can take. The ex situ and in situ conservation, just like, as I said, we have the garden here for medicinal plants, but even in the proposal that I wrote, there should be one, hopefully, in the coastal area, like Palawi. You have different plants in the coastal area. And Dr. Fernando and the other curators of MNH and young persons now with Marlon and Therese from plant biology, documenting, Dr. Buot also, documenting the different plants in different habitat. The microbiologists, as presented previously, working, and I haven't met the lady, but working on Mayon and working on different areas where you have volcanic situation, habitats that are different. We're rich in different habitats. And even what you can get in Mindanao that you cannot get in Luzon now, yung cinnamomum pala hanggang yung nutmeg pala hanggang buong Pilipinas before, but now it's already way down south. We have to find what are really good in our country and then try to hold on to this and develop the resources and keep it. Yun po ang masasagot natin.
Yes, indeed, ma'am. We have really a lot of resources and very unique as well. No, marami tayong mga islands endemic. No, so different islands has different plant composition. Anyway,
by the way, Dr. Pat also works in the field. Alam niya. So, if this is face-to-face, it would be nice that the 200 plus people can meet together. We have students, we have mentors, and I appreciate the mentors are here. And we have friends from different industry and some other places. I hope if you have a lineup of attendees, or you have a directory, or you can ask me to connect people, I would love to connect people para we can really advance then as a group.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Let's move on to marami-rami tayong mga questions, ma'am.
Yes.
So, are there potential Philippine plants that could be used as antiviral, particularly for coronavirus? Parang ito na lang.
I had the talk last. I'm not an expert on this. I won't claim to be one, but I was asked to talk in the American Chamber of Commerce where I met Dr. Cheng, and there is this article. You can write me pala. If you need additional information, LB Cardenas at UP Edu PH. So there is this article written by a German na naman, and if it is virus outside of the body not entering the cell, madali yun kahit sabon lang and some other antiviral material. But if it enters the cell, iba ng usapan. And when it comes to the plants, the article cited what plants can be used and the potential. And I also added that to my talk, what I know of. No, another thing that I can cite, just lately, if you listen to the video talk of Dr. Ludovico Ilag, well discussed, pati yung ivermectin. None of the medicinal plants, I'm sorry to say, but the closest I can give is the American Chamber of Commerce, where there are 3 speakers, and I was one of them. Whoever asked that, I could give the link and access. Clearance ko lang uli dun sa, like, ano.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Next question from Arnel Celestino. Indigenous knowledge from indigenous people is a rich source for traditional medicine. How can we, academia and research, protect this information?
Yeah, that's the reason why I pulled out my proposal. I had a proposal, but when I realized the IPR could not be properly protected at that time, I pulled it out. All my work. Pero lang mga kaibigan lang yung mga nakakausap ko na sinay ko sa inyo. But the work is really, just like in Pulag, the work is really based on what I know as a student of pharmaceutical biology and from literature. As far as I know, there is the traditional digital knowledge library worldwide. And you can check that one out. You can also check with PITAC. I posted this, the website. Sorry, hindi ko pa na-check yon. But there should be a move. And I think certain cultures, the National Council of Indigenous People, nakipag-usap din ako sa kanila to collect. And I did not have a problem because isang halaman lang na tinatapon-tapon yung kinuha ko. And I was able to talk directly to the head. Also presented it to them, or minsan sa PAMB, which is also composed of indigenous people if it is a protected area. Some people's group are quite strong in this. They even have, surprising at the time in the 1990s, late 1990s, they even have their homegrown lawyers. Talagang lawyers nila at talagang taga kanila at mas alam pa yung law natin sa amin. So I'm not too sure about that, but we can check it out how it stands now. We can also ask PCHRD, but I think PITAC is the better agency to ask about this.
Thank you, ma'am.
Baka meron sa audience na mas nakakaalam kaysa sa akin. Mahirap lang i-connect.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Wow, question from Dr. Goss.
Yes, ma'am.
May I know why I noticed that a number of researchers are scanning more organisms from the sea for medicinal products? It's a rich
field, and still an unknown field. The Europeans, they've already tested their plants. It's more diverse here in the tropics. But when you consider the sea, talaga din naman. Talaga din naman po. Yun po ang nakikita ko, ma'am. Pero at the same time, we're not losing out on the plant because as you can see, the plant, even the paclitaxel, no, for anti-cancer, with that kind of structure, which I haven't shown you, it's hard to totally synthesize it, though they were able to totally synthesize also paclitaxel chemically. Pero mahirap, magastos, mahirap, and everything. So one plant can be used for so many different indications or symptoms or actual disease, and why not top it? Lalo na yung what is fitting for our country. Iba naman yung sa atin eh. The thing like na hindi ko napapansin nung I was doing pharmaceutical bio, yung sudorific, yung pagpapawis. Even now for the COVID time, it's one of the neighbors here said, yung gardener dito, yung pagsusuob.
Yeah, suob.
Does it work or not? Have you practiced it or not? I haven't practiced it. I tried one time. I went to a doctor, chinek yung Nico, medical doctor, binigyan ako ng prescription, pero wala rin nangyari. Pumunta ako dun sa nangihilot with Jetropa curcas, with the oil, tubang bakod. Plastered it, nawala ang maga. With hilot, nawala yung sakit. Umayos yung tuhod ko. But be careful, when I tried it, napaso ako dun sa juice kasi caustic yung juice ng halaman. But when you go to them, they know. They even say that the orientation should be like this or like that. And in my case, ayoko ng bulong na may mga spirit. I believe in God who takes care of all these things. No? Ayoko rin mag-invite ng spirito na baka ibang spirito yung dumating.
Okay. Question from Gabriel Romero. Any medicinal plant that is closely related to tobacco? Its gene for the active ingredient may be
Tobacco?
edited or copied into tobacco product for production.
Tobacco? Okay. It's not exactly, hindi ko na-check yung nicotine, but in terms of purposes, yung betel, kaya gusto nila alkaloids in the betel. Yung nga, magkakain ka ng buyo with nga. And I remember a US Salvation Army person, batang-bata pa ako, pinadala ko sa Nueva Vizcaya to talk. And then they are professionals. Pero sabi nga niya, I'm changing to nga, which is the practice of Filipino. Even, can you imagine, as a kid, kakain ka na ng nga. But that is, the effect is also somehow siguro, nakakawig din, alkaloids din yung nandun. Drain up niya yung tobacco niya and then head it. Another plant is lobelia, which was cited by Dr. Merrill. I was dumbstruck when we went to Pulag kasi sinabi, ito yung altitude from this meter to that meter. Eksakto nandun. And you cannot find it. It's a small plant. It's a very small plant, small flower. Marian Cajano was really a good photographer dun sa handbook namin, nakuhanan niya yon. And it contains lobelia and it was used also as for the same effect. Even used internationally before para ma-drop ang smoking, pero habit forming din.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Perhaps to add, siguro yung isang malapit talaga sa tobacco, ma'am, yung Mitragina natin.
Alin po yun?
Mitragina is species.
Is it a puno? Hindi ko alam siya.
Puno po, Rubiaceae.
Rubiaceae.
Yun po, in fact, the PIDEA is doing some studies.
Yes. Oo, yan yung bago-bago. What's the common name of that?
Tinatawag nilang mambog.
Mambog. It's a new, relatively new one. Yes, PIDEA was here. As usual, even ages ago, a medical doctor came over looking for either Datura or Brugman siya. Kasi na-appreciate ko yung doctor and she was saying that parang sira ulo nung estudyante. She wanted to know. Nag-drive siya past 5 p.m. and went to MNH. And glad, buti na lang nandun ako, just to see the plant. So there are a number of plants that can give you a high. And medyo delikado din.
Opo. Okay, from Philip Cruz, there are many medicinal plants we adopted from the New World. Are there Philippine medicinal plants that become adopted as herbal medicine in other countries?
Okay, pardon, from the New World, okay, from the Americas, did I get it right?
Yes.
And then adopted as medicinal in some other countries. Did I get it right?
Yeah, we in the Philippines have many medicinal plants that we adopted from.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
But are there also Philippine medicinal plants that became adapted to other countries?
I can't help but think of ilang-ilang. Kasi it's a price plant that we have. It's really a price plant. And now I know that it's the exposition of the time that brought it to the world. I'm not too sure with the others pa, but definitely meron din siguro, Philip. Dapat pala tingnan maigi, sometimes that's the edge. If you have the plant, they can have the plant, but it grows better here. Take note, Philippines with so many islands, magkakaiba talaga ang effect. Some constituents like the essential oils are affected. Malakas yung impluensya ng environment. Others, hindi masyado. So, aaralin talaga. And again, this goes back to genetic engineering. Pwede mong i-genetically engineer the new approach.
Okay, I think this question on intellectual property and protecting the rights of indigenous communities is already answered. Okay, from Christina Barazona. Ma'am Lu, thank you for the informative talk. I want to ask if there are already works on saponins to viruses.
Saponins to viruses. Christine, alam mo din yung activity ng saponins, no? I have not really dig in, pero of course, we can expect activity dahil sa nature ng saponins. For the group, examples of saponi, you have the gugo, and then ano pa ba, primula, kung sa temperate countries, and some other. Pero yung structure niya kasi can disrupt membranes. Virus is another thing, no? It's not live, it has this coating, pero mahirap kalabanin. I think the focus on the immune system, no? Boosting the immune system is also a challenge for us individually. Kasi kahit anong defense you have, but if your inherent system is weak, then mahirap. Take note, we have nutritional oncologists. A doctor helped me out when I had my allergy with quote-unquote seemingly supplements that have no therapeutic claim but work. It takes time, but they work. Yeah, consideration din siguro yun.
Yeah, thanks, ma'am. So, what can you say about the claims of calabash fruit labeled as miracle fruit?
Calabas de Crescentia, no?
Kuhete, ma'am. Yeah.
Tama ba, Pat?
Yes,
A number of them are working on this. I've seen some of the results. Well, if it is proven, then why not? But I would rather not use the term miracle fruit. It has been used again and again. Pero parang prudence in using the term miracle. Kasi hindi naman siguro ganun ka-perfect. Not the elixir for life.
Okay. In fact, ma'am, we have a species of Sapotacea which has the common name miracle fruit.
Which one is that? Anong genus? Yung sa sweet, yung nagiging sweet ang lasa.
Nagiging sweet lahat ng titikman natin.
Ano na nga, the Mr. Cruz in Quiet Place, we had a grand time eating the acerola, which is maasim, pero we had a miracle. I forgot the genus, but you have Syncephalum. One of those is Syncephalum, pero there are a number, no? Miracle berry. That's true.
From Aubrey Jane Padilla. Ayan, she's my student. So is there a case in the Philippines where indigenous medicine have been patented? How are the traditional knowledge of IPs protected in your line of work?
Yung traditional knowledge of IPs, medyo na-touch natin kanina. No? Sorry, hindi ako nakapag-update dito sa anggulong ito. But we can check with PITAC, we can check with IPO. We have friends, may matatanungan din ako sa patent office on that, or dati nag-work sa patent office. In terms of indigenous plant that had been patented, other workers, other researchers, and entrepreneurs can answer this. As far as I know, wala. Pero I know, for example, sina Ma'am Luli Cruz works with the indigenous people then, protecting. Pero in some cultures, they won't even consider patenting. Kaya lang talo ka pagka ganon, no? So I'm sorry I cannot answer that, but I will be checking on that.
Thank you, ma'am. Do you plan to publish your medicinal plant database online from Nomar Wamina?
Konti pa lang naman yung sa mga work on research, some of them are already published. Now the database, Philippine Biodiversity Network, ano naman yun program ng DOST-PCHRD yun. There will be protection din naman, syempre. And in some databases, there is a level of access. But for now, we're trying to put it together. Maliit pa lang ha, ginubuo pa namin. But of course, it's Philippine property naman yun eh.
Okay.
Pero tingnan natin kung paano yung protection. We're arranging. It's Dr. Si Roy, no, Luisma, helping us with the database. We have Professor Gentalian and Professor Teresita Borromeo Altuveros before for the propagules, and we have Dr. Ellen Katap for the extracts, and we have Dr. Maria Anita Bautista for the nucleic acids. Wala ako na-miss. Ako sa project 1. Okay.
Okay, I think it's she's a student. What can you advise to students who would want to pursue studying medicinal plants?
As I've said, consider what also Dr. Padulina said. Especially, I know there are a number of students who are already in molecular biology, biotechnology. If you can apply the technique for cash crops, why not for medicinal? But to make it, as Sir said, and also for the others, no, kahit sila Dr. Laurena, to make to make the plant survive, future-proof the plant, as the Chancellor Camacho would also say, no? Future-proofing. Kasi yung inaabot nating delubyo, we need to protect the bioresources. We can also do in vitro cultures, pero talagang magastos ang in vitro.
Okay, similar question. I think same audience asked the same question on.
Tsaka ano yata, don't think na kailangan molecular biology kayo para ituloy niyo yung medicinal planting. No, all other fields can come in. Kaya if you're in taxonomy, phylogeny can be used. You know that certain traits will run across the family. And in certain cases, certain active components run within the family. And you can see taxonomy books. I would like to also cite that in the angiosperm phylogeny group. They are already citing the natural products present. Kaya consideration yun. We have loads of information literature on medicinal practices, phytotherapy from Dr. Sia, Dr. Galveston, not to be forgotten, and of course, former Chancellor Michael Tan for the different practices. For medicinals, haluyan, and we presented some. If I have missed some literature or work, patawad po, pero we encourage different fields on this.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Oh, from Dave General. I remember our farm worker in Bicol treating a deep puncture wound on his foot with crushed banana trunk. It worked to prevent infection. What is the likely active compound that prevented infection?
I'm not sure with that, pero di ba kahit naman yung liquid present in intact parts of the plant na supposedly sterile can help. But really, Dave, hindi ko alam. There can be antibiotic activity. We can tap the microbiologist to check that. Pwede ko pong basahin itong isang tanong din dito sa chat.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, kay Mr. Joselito Villa, ano pong mga sakit ginagamit ang tawa-tawa plant? We know that traditionally or popularly it's being used sa sa dengue. Pero yung proving it, natanong ko na ginawa na yung clinical trial. Pero officially, we could ask the others in the audience who may know better kung approved. Hindi naman, wala akong nakitang pronouncement na iprescribe ng doctor. Pero I know it's popularly used for that. In the olden times, checkan ko lang. Tawa-tawa is vulnerary, if I'm not mistaken, for wounds also. Yeah, that's right. Yung Filipino daw, from the work of Professor Planta, that is the most popular, tawa-tawa is the most popular medicinal pag may sugat to prevent pa para mag-wound healing. I also would like to add, that reminds me, for example, comfrey was taken in as a tea. I was shocked when I saw that in a phytochemistry conference in Europe, that it caused liver cirrhosis because of the pyrolysidine alkaloid. And then I said, bakit naman may mga nag-inuman ng tsaa sa Pilipinas? You remember the 70s kung buhay na tayo noon? But even so, even then, tinuturo talaga na it's for I learned that from mom then, that it's for skin wound healing. And if you check now, the allantoin, which is present high in comfrey, is also for the skin. And this could help us. And in reality, even the German book says, comfrey root is used for cough, parang emollient ba? Hindi naman pang throw up ng phlegm, no? But it is used talaga. It works. But the German pharmaceutical book says, because of the presence of pyrolysidine alkaloid, humanap ka na ng ibang halaman para magamit mo for that purpose. So placing the warning sign, and we cannot say that if it's poisonous, you cannot use it. Many of the medicinals, yun ang mantra din, na sinabi nga, Theophrastus, na poison and medicine, sometimes it's just a matter of dosage. So how to use it, which part to use, how much to use, punta tayo dun sa mga professional who know this better. The doctor, the pharmacist, hindi sila nakakaalam nito. Kaya din may clinical trials tayo. But not discounting that many, just like the lady from Palawan, she knows it works. And it is a medicinal.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Probably last 3 questions. We're already running out of time. Anonymous attendee again. So, good morning, Dr. Cardenas. I am high school science teacher, and I was once tasked to teach grade 10 health, where the traditional and alternative medicine topic was included. It was quite challenging because of the limited knowledge I have on such discussion. May I know if there are programs or activities for high school teachers and students so that we can learn better about this topic?
I think we can consider that, and sa MNH or even sa IBS. We used to have summer short course. Ginawa ni Ma'am De Padua yun, no? Summer short course on herbal medicine. When the garden is okay, even if I'm retired, there are students, and I can be here every now and then. And we will push for that kasi kailangan nga. Kahit na di pa tayo makapag face-to-face, siguro we can work it out. You know my email address? Kaya pwedeng kumontak ka, tignan natin para mas alam din namin yung pangangailangan. Pero you're right, you can present it to the kids na alam nilang worthwhile din talaga yung paggamit ng medicinal. But the risk is always thought. Lagi namin sinasabi kung aling halaman, yung wag mo nang hawakan, kahit wag mo nang amuyin. There is a course pala in UPLB, Economic Botany, which I teach, which was proposed by Professor De Padua, which is also taught by Therese and Marlon and Elia probably dun sa laboratory namin. It's an economic plant and economically used plants. And one of those is, of course, the medicinal, where we give more time. There is also a course, histochemistry, to detect the location of the active constituents in the plant. And then, of course, biotechnology of plant secondary products, which can be used. Other institutions for chemistry in UPLB and some other places, of course, UST and UP Diliman, Ateneo, De La Salle, they have courses on natural products. Pero tailored for teachers, gawin natin na maintindihan. Challenge na maintindihan ng bata. Pag-practicean ko na yung aking apo sa pamangkin.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Oh, this is a question from Kidapawan.
Hi, hello.
From Dr. Alexis de Manuel. Kilala ko siya kaya alam kong taga Kidapawan siya. Verifying and providing the benefits of these plants will take another 100 years. Very relevant question. Anybody or agency seriously collecting these plants before they disappear from the wild?
That's why we're doing this. Meron naman po. You can see the initiatives done by DOST. And then of course from the allied, kahit sa kahit sa forestry, kahit sa trees, may mga conservation moves, di ba? And of course you also have the National Plant Genetic Resources Laboratory, Institute of Plant Breeding. These are institutions that try to take care of the plants. Ang kailangan lang ng help, which I would really reiterate, sa laki ng Pilipinas, pula tayo.
Yeah.
What you have in your area, please take care of them. Minsan, hindi maiwasan na ipagdadamot, di ba? Kasi, ba't si ganun na magbi-business nito sa amin ito, mga ganung bagay. But I think common ground can be found. Pero yun yung reality. Yun yung reality. We're in different places. We have different variations of flora. We have to take care of our plants. Yun po, I hope it answers the question. And I think going to those specific agencies, be it DOST or some other, it can be done. I also would like to put in this word, some researchers are not in the Tuklas Lunas program, but I know of specific researchers here in UPLB that are making good contribution, published work, science validated. And you can see that siguro from OBCRE website. And I recognize these people na talagang magaling yung output. Kaya gawin natin yun na ma-put in together para we can share to others.
Okay, the best way every Filipino can do is to help in conservation of any native plants we have. Alam natin, tama, no? Matagal bago maproseso yung mga patent o even yung mga verifications. But yeah, yun yung general notion dapat na conservation of all native plants.
Pat, can I add something? Siguro something quote-unquote positive that we can see with the COVID case that we have now. Sometimes na tinatalon na, no, na wala yung clinical trial, or at times off-brand ba yung tawag doon, gamit sa ibang bagay na itra-try na din kasi we're pressed eh. We need the medicine, or we need to alleviate the problem. So makikita na natin, mas ma-appreciate din natin kung bakit kailangan and bakit it takes time. Pero we can hasten it. Well, magtulungan tayo, pero in the first place, meron ba tayo ng material? Yun yung una.
Okay. Apologies for those questions na hindi ko mababasa. This will be the last question we will ask to Dr. Cardenas. From Philip Cruz, ma'am, is it okay to transfer elite varieties of medicinal plants in other islands for cultivation, considering that it can cross-pollinate with the local varieties?
Medyo delikado nga, Philip. Even for the small garden that we have, even for keeping the inherent quality, no, lalo na kung elite na yon, we can ask the breeders. I can connect you to some others on that who's doing this particular line. Pero delikado nga. Kasi yung nangyari nung turn of the century, parang ang tanda na natin, nung turn of the century, di uso yung 10 halamang gamot, at talaga naman, tracts of lands ang ginagawa. Kung walang magpa-process and all, di wala. Tapos, you get the space, somebody or something lose the space. Kaya sayang yung native plants dun sa area. Tanong natin, Philip. Hanap tayo ng matatanungan.
Okay. Yeah, again, thank you very much to all who participated. Marami pa po tayong questions. All of these questions will be noted, and we will try to send it to Ma'am Lu. She can answer it through the MNH webpage and other media.
I'd appreciate that. Oo. And thank you. Thank you for the interaction.
Okay. So, yeah, that was a very great discussion for everyone. Sayang, no? Kulang tayo sa oras, no? In fact, for me, it's not only a Baliktanaw, but with the immense experiences of Dr. Cardenas, a lot of untold stories regarding our traditional ethnobotanical practices were revealed as well. So everyone, let us congratulate our speaker for a very splendid presentation. And at this point, to show our gratitude for Ma'am Lu's talk, very beautiful presentation, let me present to you with this electronic certificate of recognition signed by our director, Marian P. De Leon. Again, ma'am, thank you very much po and congratulations. Let us all give Dr. Lourdes Cardenas a virtual round of applause.
Marami pong salamat sa lahat. Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay, so let me now turn you over to our MC for the closing. Dr. Castillo, take it away.
Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Cardenas. Thank you, Prof. Malabrigo. Now, before I end the webinar and we take our lunch, let me give out a few reminders. No? One, please evaluate the seminar to get a certificate of presentation. The link is flashed on the screen and copied in the chat box of Zoom, posted by Florante Cruz. No? So you can also use your mobile phone to scan the QR code shown in the slide. So you can do it now if you have QR reader so that you can evaluate the webinar. And then you can click the link provided so that you will be able to give your evaluation immediately. You have only until 3 p.m. to finish your evaluation. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Oh, so I think you have already scanned the QR code. And we thank all the people and organization and the resources and inspiration that support us listed down in this acknowledgement in this slide, no? National Quincentennial Committee Philippines, UP System, of especially the UPLB Museum of Natural History. And finally, please follow us at UPLB Museum on social media. You can watch again, no? You can watch again the webinar as well as other webinar conducted by the Museum of Natural History. So this is the contact UPLB.edu.ph, and you can follow us at, as I said, in Facebook, Twitter, and other YouTube and Instagram. So the webinar is the last in the series and concludes MNS Quincentennial Commemoration Webinar Series. So there are 10. Baliktanaw, Kasaysayan, Kalikasan. We would like to thank all our speakers and audience for joining us on this journey as we discovered and revisited the importance of significant historical events that have ultimately shaped Philippines' environment and natural wealth. Keep safe. Thank you and goodbye. But before I finally say goodbye, one announcement: the UPLB Museum of Natural History will be having its 45th founding anniversary, a virtual celebration. So in behalf of the Museum of Natural History, we are inviting you again to participate in this celebration. So we have different speakers, and titles, Staying the Core Philippine Museum Amid COVID-19 Pandemic by Dr. Jose Rizal, National Committee of Museum. Enhancing STEM Learning Through Natural History Collection, Dr. B.P. Cristobal of BOST. Lighting Up Learning using Extension Torch by Dr. Eileen Dupo, our faculty regent. Herbarium and Museum Collection for Biodiversity and Ecological Research in the Philippines by Dr. Cecilia Moran, faculty researcher of UST. So for those who are interested, just please join or participate later. You can use this photo filter to change your profile pictures on social media by visiting TWI-BBNIC. This is the link below. So please copy the link if you want to change your profile picture, focusing on the 45th anniversary of our Museum of Natural History. And also launching of Museum of Natural History virtual tour. So if you don't have the chance to visit the Museum of Natural History because of the restriction, you can watch this virtually. So you can please copy the link. https://fb/watch/ okay. Anyway, I will just copy. So this is the link, so that you will be able to see what is there in the Museum of Natural History. So please make other activities to look forward to. Okay, so launching of Quincentennial virtual exhibit, launching of the MNH botanical database. Siguro this is the thing that others would like to have, MNH botanical about plant database. There are questions. I read some question and it is related to this botanical database. And also presentation of the MNS mission goals, core values, and objectives also. So please make sure you log out your Zoom for security purposes. So thank you for attending and participating in this webinar. And I hope you learn a lot of information. And looking forward to see you again in the future activities of MNS. Thank you very much.